I have lived in Winona area for 70 some years. Currently, I serve as the chair of the scholarship. I was recently the past organizing regent for this chapter, and our Winona chapter is built like the Indian princess. It's the National Association of Daughters of American Revolution, and it was organized on October 11, 1890.
They founded it because the men would not allow them in. And so it was kind of a rebellion how the Daughters of the American Revolution was founded. It's all women, for women, by women.
In order to become a member of the DAR and join a chapter, you have to apply for and prove your lineage way back to your patriot. And so that's a lot of legal documents that you have to put together and get the recorded dates, and then you send it off into national, and they verify it and prove it, and then after that you can become a member. The one I have at home is about 4 inches thick, but piece by piece. Sometimes you have to go to this county, and sometimes you have to go to the churches, and there's various places you find all these documents that you need. They're trying to place their relative, and they need actual dates and so forth. So it's very real. What happens is very real. Well, the first thing that I think about is just a personal satisfaction that I was able to go back in after it was disbanded and start a new chapter, and we kept the same name, and we're following their legacy. Its actually first meeting was February 13th of 1898. I also like the legacy that the previous Winona chapter had. The original founding members buying the land that our famous sugar loaf stands on because it was being blasted away. And I'm not sure the history of why they were able to buy it, but they did buy it, and they held on it for a while. And then in the early 1950s, they donated it to the city of Winona with the understanding that it will never ever again become commercialized. So they were part of saving Sugarloaf.
Winona was, of course, first settled in about 1810 by the Wapashaw's band of Sioux. In 1810, it appears like that was the first one they came here, and it seems that what attracted them was Sugarloaf, which looked a lot like the helmet that Wapashaw I had gotten from the British with his help during the French and Indian War. Fourth claim, Irwin Johnson's claim, is where the Winona city was started. So, and then, of course, the early settlers came in for farming. It started out as a frontier city to the state of Minnesota. There were 5 railroads that headquartered in Winona and came out of here, going west and beyond that point. We were kind of called the gateway of Minnesota at the time.
I currently serve as the elected treasurer of our chapter. So I collect dues, I pay the bills. We're focusing on America 250, and we have purchased a tree from the Winona nursery. It is all purchased and ready to go. We're doing a tree planting at Woodlawn honoring Minnesota's only Revolutionary War patriot, Stephen Taylor.
Well, he was born in 1757, Aaron and Phoebe Taylor. His father was also a Revolutionary War patriot. He was at Fort Ticonderoga in New York, not as a soldier, but instead with his mother and other family members who tagged along with his father, who was a soldier, enlisted soldier. So it makes sense because his father was in the Revolutionary War as a patriot also. And that's why they did that little fort type situation when they decided to put around his gravesite. As a young boy, he was involved, and then when he got to be older, he actually enlisted and served. So there's that 2 pieces. Yeah. Taylor enlisted in the Revolutionary War in 1781.
Apparently born in Massachusetts, and he enlisted in the Massachusetts militia and served in Colonel Voss's battalion near New York. Toward the end of the war, the battalion was moved to Yorktown, to Virginia, to do the final battle with the British. The only battle I can recognize that he served in was the Battle of Yorktown. He was on duty in southern New York County near New York City, basically watching the British. At the time, George Washington was stationed up in that area with some of his troops. And during the skirmish down in Yorktown, he was wounded. He claimed he was wounded with a rifle ball.
And he suffered a rifle ball wound to his shoulder and his right eye during his service. And after he was honorary discharged from the war, and he returned to Massachusetts, and then sometime later they moved to Allegheny County in New York. And his pension records show that he was granted a stipend of $8 a month for his service. He was possibly lured to this area because of the rich and fertile land that they were all told. He moved his family, and his son Edward moved his family across the country in 1854, and they ended up in Minnesota Territory. He joined many immigrants that came from New York to move west.
The letter from his grandson-in-law to the DAR president in Winona County was that they came by steamboat on the Ohio and Mississippi River near the Allegheny River, so it can be an assumption that they probably came by steamboat Whisquoy Valley, where Edward Taylor's property, 40 acres would have been. He got 160 acres of a land bounty for being a Revolutionary War soldier in Wabasha County. Either sold or gave up to an Irish woman, a widow with about 6 children.
He was a farmer. He was described as a large and robust man, strictly temperance, no liquor or tobacco. He died at the age of 100, which is amazing, in the arms of his granddaughter. We do know that his family were members of the First Congregational Church, and so there's some records at the First Congregational Church of them, and that's where his funeral took place. The family records show that his eye would light up whenever he spoke about the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War lasted for 8 years. It started in 1775, but it didn't end until 1783. I think that people think it ended in 1776. They think that's the end of the war. And the Constitution wasn't even ratified until 1788. Although they got to understand that they were taking 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds. They were fighting alongside their brothers or their fathers or whatever. They just weren't enlisted. But he was enlisted later on. He is the only Revolutionary War soldier known to be buried in Minnesota. And he was first buried in a prairie cemetery and then later moved to Woodlawn Cemetery in Winona.
We have an annual cemetery walk in Woodlawn Cemetery. And the first year was 1999, and he was one of the 6 people that were recognized as a cemetery walk. And he's actually been portrayed about 3 times as various cemetery walks.
When he was buried in Woodlawn Cemetery, the DHR chapter at that time created around his gravestone site a symbolic colonial stockade with the 4 corners lookout towers. And since 1904, that chapter, and now us, take care of that gravesite. And in June of 2022, we participated in the Freedom is Never Free, honoring our veterans. There was a new memorial built at Woodlawn Cemetery. We purchased a flag to fly over his gravesite, and it was presented that dedication ceremony. Then later in that afternoon, we took that flag and unfolded it and had pictures taken in front of his gravesite. Ever since he was put into Woodland Cemetery, we take care of it. We take care of it. We have pride in the fact that he's here. I feel that the community isn't as aware of Stephen, and even that he's being buried here, or what it means. And there's not any one reason for that, because he is in a prominent place in Woodlawn Cemetery. But the impact just hasn't sunk in or resonated for some reason. We're hoping that this America 2050 celebration, maybe where people kind of start to understand a little bit more what his presence really means, to have him here in Winona as the only one in Minnesota.
And we will be having a Patriot tree planting next spring, potentially and hopefully in April of 2026. And we will be honoring our Patriot for the America 250 celebration. So I am going to be reading to you the words that were spoken at the end of his funeral. Let us therefore, as patriots, mindful of the service of patriotic sires, evince our gratitude and show the world that party strife or secular prejudices cannot destroy the veneration we entertain towards the heroes of 1776. And when we found this quote, these last words spoken, we just both, it made our hearts full and kind of took us back, because this is the message. This is everything right here. It gives me goosebumps, because how true are these words today? I mean, if this isn't significant to the times we live in, and also to let everybody know that there always has been some divide, but at the end of the day, coming together for the greater good. And like Susan said too, like even with the Constitution, the compromise that we always all can't, we have to give and take, and no one's all bad and no one's all good, you know, that we're all just doing the best we can with what we have, but to always strive to do better. And I feel also that he is a reminder of our freedom and our liberty.